This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Okay, let's just give me 1 minute. I'm going to trying to find. Okay. Okay. All right, let's get started. Let me share my document here. So for today's meeting, we'll walk through kind of what I thought. Actually, this may be a good time for us to step back a little bit and take a look at what we had decided and proposed as a scope for CMS work. And based on that, let's start talking about activity and do a little bit of a planning and propose some structure for our discussions going forward, so that contributions can be made into specific areas. And this is just a proposal today. We can have more discussion of the structure, what we want. So I would like to propose a discussion. Before I get started, I wanted to also let the team know that actually, as we formed CMS group sub project under server, there is a requirement that actually we have the proper leadership identified, lead and two leaders. And at that time, we wanted Reddy to become a co-lead, but Reddy was leading other effort, and OCP rules didn't allow us to have same person in two positions. So Reddy has graciously accepted to step down from the other role, and he has decided to provide full-time support for our group. So I would like to thank Reddy and welcome for him to become co-lead for this team. Thank you, Reddy.
Thanks, Manoj, and rest of the team.
All right, awesome. Okay, so let's talk through what we have right now, just as a quick review of where we are and what we have in the queue. We did present last week. Johannes and Abhishek presented Meta's requirements for hardware for TPP with the hotness requirements. Samir is working on a presentation, hopefully sometime soon. Renu, I think you're online. I know we had requested whether you will be able to provide from your perspective what would be the requirements for hotness. I don't know whether you will be ready soon, but not trying to put you on a spot right in front of everybody, but something to keep in mind for future.
Yeah.
And okay, all right, awesome. That will be good. So do you think in a couple of weeks you'll be able to present something, Reno?
Yeah, probably need to get Qasim Ali. I think you met him.
Yeah.
To talk to him and then bring him on board. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll tentatively, Samir, I think you're looking for presenting next week, right?
Yes, Manoj. Next week.
Okay. So Renu, perhaps week after that would be good timing.
Okay.
And Pankaj wanted to present an idea of memory objects as a kind of related, but perhaps more future looking. Is that right, Pankaj? I don't know whether Pankaj is online right now. But this is another agenda. JEDEC work continues to be a discussion still. We did have kind of an offline discussion, few of us with JEDEC, and we're still kind of working through that. We have to still figure out how to collaborate and interact, because there are fundamental ways each group operates. JEDEC is OCP is a very open group. All the functionality and discussions are open and it's then available. JEDEC works with the member discussions, so you want to be careful and respectful for that. So we are trying to figure out how we can contribute and provide inputs appropriately. Ready?
Just wanted to, I know you're aware, but I just want to make sure we already have some sort of structure put in place for CDXML, and I would think that we could do something similar here.
Yes.
Is there a feeling we need a different structure?
No, we don't know yet, actually. But we did kind of broach the topic, and we said maybe that's a good model to use. at least it provides us a way to provide input into JDEC, although it's not necessarily bidirectional. But yeah, we can collect all the requirements, collect all the inputs that we have, and then as a group, we can provide that as a feedback into JDEC using the same method that you mentioned from chiplets or
We know
ESA.
you need some support for that.
Yes. Once we get there, of course, I think we will need that support. Is that what you're asking, Cliff?
Are you aware of the fleet management working group that's kind of getting started up right now? Fleet management for memory. It sounds like they might have some JEDEC input also. I don't know all the details yet, but I was wondering if
I
you
see.
maybe coordinate with them.
I'm one of the JEDEC chairs. Anything I can help you with?
Right now, I think maybe what we'll do is basically we'll go to a section that we're going to go through all the work that we have, where is being done, and then based on that, we should identify where we work with which body or where we provide the inputs. But JDEC, I think discussion would be for any work that we are doing. We want to make sure that we provide that into JDEC as an input. Because what is being discussed in JDEC, we can't necessarily bring up and discuss it here in the open forum. Is that my understanding correct?
But the opposite is also true. In other words, an open forum can create requirements that our team members who are active in other consortia can take it over there.
That is true. That is true. And so that's Sam, absolutely right. And this is what we are trying to think that, we'll correct the requirements, anything that is not, and we'll discuss it today. Anything that is specifically being discussed in some other groups, we'll provide that as an input. Or if that seems to be the right place, we provide that as an input from the CMS activity. And anything that is not being covered, we'll have a CMS define that requirements and then put it out as a specification, joint specification for the team in the CMS.
So the only thing I want to hear, Manoj, I understood is one of the things we are doing with CDXML out of ODSA, right, which is also going into JEP30, is that the work done at OCP is a complete body of work. And that maybe all of it or a portion of it is leveraged into JEDEC. I would hesitate to want to support something where the work is splintered and there's a piece at OCP and there's a piece at JEDEC and there's no alignment. So hoping that's not kind of what you're thinking about.
No, and we'll get into specifics like that discussion to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Okay.
I mean, the splintering doesn't happen.
And the other thing is, please make sure you coordinate so that if we need to, because right now the MOU with JEDEC is specific to CDXML, and if there's going to be other interactions where information is flowing between the two organizations, that would need to be revised, and we should do that.
Yeah. Yeah, from what we had discussed, I think that JDEC, that MOU is specific right now. So if you want to use it, we want to revise and target it for CMS work.
Yes, either that, or we're going to propose to put something a little more comprehensive in place than an MOU, some sort of alliance arrangement. But I'll take that up with JEDEC when you get there. First, we need to understand the requirements. Do you have you seen the CDXML? There's a PowerPoint that describes the working relationship, how it's working. Have you seen that for CDXML?
I have a feeling I have, but can you send it again, Cliff? We can we can discuss it also in future meeting, or I can share it with
Because there's really no reason to reinvent the wheel if you can leverage.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We had a discussion and we did talk about the CDXML work, and we did conclude that actually that's the model to use.
Okay, very good. I'll forward you the PowerPoint again, just so you have it at the top of your inbox, and you can go from there.
Sounds good. Thanks, Cliff. Okay. And I'm sure there will be more work that will come. SNIA CXL work. There was a discussion. Anand had presented from what he has been doing, and he has presented into SNIA. we will continue to have updates on that.
Okay. And again,
Is everybody getting echo, or is it just me?
It could be me that has the echo. I'm not sure, but so
No, we
just
don't
to
hear any.
aware that we have discussions ongoing with SNIA and OCP, and at some point, if there's going to be continued interaction, we should also look at formalizing that relationship.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. And I think we need DCMHS work overview also. So I don't know, somebody it will be good to get that work presented here also, just to get an idea of where is a overlap and where is the leverage that we can do. Is that something, CMAC, you can recommend anybody that we should get here to talk about DCMHS? Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so regarding SNIA, a lot of the pinout definitions are fundamentally almost close to 99% finalized from the management side of it. So SNIA, especially, that is going to be very much useful for the discussion of managing the memory flow before the actual memory is on board kind of thing, right? So that.
Anand, we can barely hear you.
Oh.
Your voice is a little bit muted.
Can you hear me now or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of definition on the pinouts, especially from management side, has been in place in the working group in SNIA, and the volumetric definition. A lot of things are already in play, and it would be helpful basically to see how the memory basically getting managed and whether those management interfaces are good enough for the CMS work group, because that is very important for us to know.
So you're saying the memory
the management interface, especially on the management interface, not the memory interface. Memory interface is predominantly PCI.
Management interfaces.
Management interface.
Okay. That's the one that requires immediate input, Anand?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
So there is echo. I think someone has actually turned on both the laptop speaker and probably your.
Yeah, I tried muting myself and it's still coming. Oh, somebody muted. Okay, now looks better.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, that's good. Okay.
Sorry, Ananta, you're saying management interfaces is the key open that requires immediate input. What else?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Can you post? Oh, I'm still getting echo again.
It could be from my side, but I don't see. Only thing I dialed is only laptop, so I don't know what's that. But
Okay.
I'll keep myself muted. Okay.
Sounds good. Okay. Let me see who else is on. Okay, the echo has stopped now, right now at least. And I think we need a UCI and manageability work overview. I'm trying to remember, somebody had volunteered. Was it Durgesh, you had suggested things?
Yes, I suggested. So I have people lined up. Let's finish the CXL and then we'll come back on this one.
Yeah,
Okay, sounds good.
Is the manageability tied to UCIe, Durgesh, or is it, CXL?
Yeah, right now
my
it's
input would
tied
be
to,
separate
right
it
now
out.
it's true.
What is the,
Where,
sorry, can someone dive
if
a
I,
little bit
this answer,
to,
go ahead, Cliff.
can someone dive in a little bit here about the relationship with UCIe?
Yeah, that's exactly I was answering. So even though it says UCIe, the question came up is the way UCIe and CXL, all the consortiums are looking at manageability. So the goal was more educational on how UCIe is looking on manageability through the MTF and what we are adopting. And then we can, as we go further, we can try to leverage it. So it's more educational to decide the next steps coming from here.
Okay. So that would be in the case that UCIe is a protocol between chiplets, right? Or is this looking at UCIe in the larger picture?
No, in the chiplets, you're right.
Okay. I'm kind of wondering why we aren't looking at a bunch of wires as well.
That's a bigger discussion. I don't know if someone is more qualified to answer. Yeah.
If I may, I think this is Cliff. This is not to exclude any activity. This was more of a discussion. Whatever has come up, I'm maintaining the queue. Anybody who wants to bring up a topic and discuss, that doesn't mean that yeah.
I think it'd be important then perhaps to see if someone from Bunch of Wires would want to talk here and look at the alignment with ODSA. Manoj, we could chat with Boppy about that.
Okay. I'll reach out to you, please. Okay, sounds good. All right. And in DCMHS, we'll need somebody so that we can have a. I think there was suggestion that actually we may have some overlap with DCMHS, or maybe should be was a suggestion, and so we need to at some point we need to figure out if there is an overlap and how it is there. So in general, what I see is actually that with OCP there may. Yes, sir.
Manoj, I just want to make sure we have a meeting with this and extended cable team on Friday. The right people are going to be there from this team.
Okay. All right. Meeting is on Friday, you said?
Yeah. Mohammed Al Batal from Seagate sent a meeting request kind of thing, and some people signed up for it. I just want to make sure. Just want to make sure that the right people are going to be there.
Is it on the calendar, Siamak, or is just a one-off meeting?
It is a one-off meeting, but he sent it out earlier to this team and other teams asking for participation, and whoever, he came up with the time slot based on people's feedback. I'm just maybe saying that such a thing is happening.
I see.
I believe it is necessary for at least these three teams, extended cables, composable memory systems, and DCMHS people, to have the same system view, because I've seen that individual teams are imagining what a system is and come up with requirements. It is important for us to kind of see the same system view so our requirements are aligned.
Right. Yeah. So I think anybody who is going to join, I guess Siamak, you'll be there. If anybody else, in fact, Reddy, if you think you can
I will
sign up,
plan
and
on
anybody else who wants,
Okay.
Okay.
Can you share the invite again? I do not see it in my inbox. Siamak, if you can re-forward to the group.
Okay, I don't see that here. Yeah, I don't have it either. So Siamak, if you can send it to the group, unless it's a smaller group that is targeted, I don't know, but it will be good if you can share.
It's a smaller group, but I see Manoj, you are on the
I'm on it?
Yes.
Huh. Okay.
You're actually, two of you are there.
Okay, I'll look at it.
It's at 1 o'clock Pacific time.
Oh, is it OCP PCIe
right
connectivity?
Right.
Okay, that's why I think I got confused on that one. Okay, PCI external connectivity. Okay, I see.
Now, invite whoever else you think should be
there.
there.
Yeah, absolutely. Durgesh, is that what I heard? Somebody heard the names. Who was interested? I'll forward the calendar.
That was Pecan from Intel.
Pecan, okay. And ready, okay.
Yeah, Manoj forwarded it to me. I don't have it either. I don't know.
I'll send it.
Sent it.
Yes, because I can't make it on Friday. I'll forward it. Okay. Who is it? Who else is interested? Why don't you? Anybody who is interested, just send the name or send it on the mailing list, and I'll forward the invite. Or send an email to me. Or text it or message it here. Either way will work. Okay, let me just, so we are at 9:24. Let me just take to the next step then. So what I wanted to do was kind of a step back a little bit and talk about what scope and collaboration. I'm not going to spend time on it, but at least just kind of reset or level set what we said we are going to do when we created a group and we are approved as a project. So our group was really to make sure that we are establishing the right guidelines for devices so that for the larger adoption, we can establish use cases, system configuration, and then how do we make sure that establish the right hierarchical solutions from various perspective, from adoption perspective, and then provide benchmarks that allows the solution to be validated and tested and compared. And we major contribution that we have talked about was we want to make sure that it's an OCP group. So we want to get hardware specifications, which includes memory expansion boards, memory module form factors, and then benchmarks to go along with that from hardware specification. And then make sure that it's a hardware software co-design. So identify all the right components from software perspective. And we have started having the discussion in that area now slowly, right? We have TPP discussion, which we had. We have had hotness indicator, etc. And then BIOS, firmware, tools, orchestration, manageability, etc. So these are the two areas that we say that we will get contribution. So my thinking is basically let's kind of talk to and say that how do we get this discussion going forward and get contributions so that we can have very specific discussion. Three major areas of discussion that have been discussed in past in CMS group before it was formed as a sub project was in the three areas, and there could be more. These are examples. You have direct attach, which is native memory expansion, where you have a expansion to a CPU where we get additional memory capacity or bandwidth or both by attaching media, which could be DDR anything. For example, if this is DDR5, this could be DDR4, DDR5, or different media, as long as it connects through the CXL. Small pools. Microsoft has talked about this use case, and multiple people, VMware talked about it, Uber talked about it. Use case where you can have pooled memory with multiple hosts sharing the memory or pooling the memory. And then this is a futuristic consideration of where the pools start becoming at a rack scale, where we have multiple systems or chassis in the rack or whether sharing the memory. And I think to some level, we have been having discussion somewhere in between these two also. Where I was going to go with that next is that, as we talked about, this is a hardware software co-design. So that means tiered memory will require the holistic discussion, which is what CMS is supposed to do, because we want to make sure that, we can establish the architectural specification that provides tying hardware software together from the top to the bottom. Not all the work needs to be done at OCP. A lot of work is going to happen in multiple places, as we started talking about. But we want to make sure that we can bring the blueprint together as a system architecture, which includes various things. And this is just kind of more for a discussion for us to talk through. Wanted to offer a view of it because as we started talking, we identified that hey, there are multiple groups working. But let's make sure that we know what we need and then identify stuff that we are going to do. So one of the things that I wanted to point out is basically the what you see the boxes with the gray is I believe where we want to make sure that we have contributions coming in. There are a bunch of areas that work is already happening. CXL does define functionality for how CXL components will interact with each other, how to configure those things. A lot of things that will be built on the top of it, perhaps what we can have pointers so that we can speed up the adoption for many companies. And this is the whole point of OCP, that we'll try to make sure that we have configurations for if there are kernel drivers, like we talked about TPP, which are going to be made upstream available. We'll maintain the pointer to that. We want to make sure that we have any kind of configurability and orchestration and fabric manager. So the functionality that may be getting defined in CXL, if you identify any gaps that are not there, we can have a discussion here or identify the right partner to work with in the external industry.
This might be a good point place to discuss the availability of persistent memory.
Right now, I may have. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that a persistent memory resource is distinctly different from a volatile memory resource and should be designed in from the get-go, I would think.
Gotcha. Yes, and I think we should identify here. I'm going to make this slide available so that people can comment also directly so that we can start adding to it. Major contribution from hardware perspective, I feel, is also needs to come where, as we talked about those use cases, whether it is a native memory expansion or whether it is a pooled or whether it is within the rack, we want to have designs that get contributed. This is what OCP does, that we have design implementations done by company and people bring it to the open into OCP so that people can use it and can adopt it, and we can have more people providing their requirements through those contributions in a way. And so whether it's a memory modules, whether expansion boards or memory shelf itself or anything more than that at a rack level, for example, this is where we can get most of the contributions, because these are implementation specific, right? Every company, people want to do their implementations, and it's very difficult to draw boundary around it, but we can share it, we can make it openly available, and this is where we think we can get contributions.
Manoj, this is very good summary.
Yeah.
It seems that because this team is a hardware software co-design, I believe we can benefit from defining the smallest but still comprehensive enough of a system as a reference system that has all of these components that you captured in several slides.
Right.
Persistent memory, volatile memory, switches, non-switches, small, large, all that, so that hardware can be built to enable software work. So software teams can say, hey, for me to do my particular innovation, I need hardware to look like this. Every software person can say that, and then we will reduce that system implementation, that reference design, to what's absolutely necessary to capture all of those requirements. And that would be a very good reference design for all of us to work towards. In that model, we can focus our effort in building that reference design, but still accommodate every aspect of it.
Good point. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I would love to hear, of course, I think how we can get there and what all things we do, but I do believe that actually this will help a lot for wider adoption.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why CMAC, we essentially said, let's focus on direct attached single host as a starting point without losing track of broader set of requirements and constraining them, and lay the foundation, and then we can easily expand on that one, right, with multi-ported as well as the switched.
Right, but again, if we were to stick with what I was trying to capture, a direct attach, of course that's this first step to do, but it will not comprehend other things that other people are trying to do. So somewhere in middle of the diagram that Manoj was suggesting earlier, maybe that is the system level diagram we can create. So it has some sort of a multi-hosting, some sort of a cable connection or whatever that is, and one or two modules that could be persistent or not, a switch be there or not. If we can articulate a smallest, complex enough of a system, smallest but comprehensive enough of a system, then we can get OCP teams who are system level people start designing to that and make it available to software people.
Yeah, I think we.
Yeah, I mean the feedback is well taken. I think it's a fine balance between what is that smallest system versus what is that is the starting point. I think we are all trying to essentially get to some implementation level view to iterate it over, make sure the framework is actually well articulated, right? It's more of an iterative approach more than anything else, but yeah, feedback is well taken.
Right.
needs to be.
The reason I'm kind of highlighting that is that I've seen people do direct connect solutions, and if you want, just go around and there are lots of demonstrations and POCs done there. But that does not cover the entire composable memory system concept. It is the first step required, but it does not take us to the next step.
So Simak, how about basically creating a direct attach, then basically physically differently located outside through the switch or kind of a cable connections, and pure fabric based as a 2 to 3 kind of a slide set to articulate the use case and how the management works in on the CMS. Where does the CMS contributes into that, correct? That is the focus of this group.
Right. That could be a very good starting point, knowing that a direct attach will be a subset. From the software point of view, we will make sure that the direct attach is also comprehended by that more complex system.
Yeah, it's basically expanding slide 8 that Manoj is talking about. You have those elements here, right? So there is a direct attach nature, there is a fabric based, and there is multi-ported, right? And
right. So
yeah.
so what I'm through this conversation, what I'm trying to establish is agreement from you guys that although we can do these things, maybe it is time for us to in fact do it.
Thanks, Amaka. That's absolutely right, and this I thought actually this is a good discussion today. I didn't mean to cut you off, by the way, but I just could not hold my excitement about it. Where I was going, I think what we are thinking is actually, let's put the spec template down and get contributions to specific sections to just expand to the what Jamak you're saying. I hope that I thought we put the end user requirements, we put various use cases, system configurations. I think, and to your point, I think there'll be multiple system configurations that can be contributed, right? Which could be within a board, within a chassis, within a rack, or within multiple boxes. And I think we can get more details, which talks about benchmarks and metrics, but then we go to the hardware architecture specification. And I put here memory module form factors, but there could be specifications for the expansion board. There could be memory shelf that is being pulled between multiple hosts. It could be within a chassis, across within a rack. And I think this is where we can get contribution. The reason I brought it up a little bit in between, because going back to this here, the point I was trying to think is basically, we should allow people to do the implementations and contribute them to the open community. It may be very I don't know, I'm just thinking aloud here, right? People will have slightly different implementations, and which is okay, but as long as, to CMAC your point, software community can go ahead and utilize what's common and get the contributions, and that software component or software contributions also be brought back into the CMS specifications, so that anybody who is going to build system, they don't have to reinvent everything. For example, if Meta is basically, we are going to do tiering and many other people are going to do their own solutions, we can bring it here, we can contribute, and we can put a pointer to say that, hey, this is where the latest kernel has the implementation that we're talking about. So that people can start from there.
Right.
And bring up the whole advantage of openness.
Right. So the meeting on Friday, I hope it will draw these distinctions in that every one of the companies can build something on their own. That's fine. Software guys using those hardware elements, as you guys know, software guys will play with any hardware that you have for them. If different software groups think about this problem in different ways just because there are different hardware elements available to them, then we splinter the solution. So the best way, maybe it is not the most optimum and most cost effective, most efficient way to build a reference design for high volume production, but it will be an essential element to get all the software guys to think the same way, do the same things. An optimization for high volume production can happen individually. Different companies can do a different version of that reference design. But if the reference design is done in such a way that all software guys do it the same way, then the follow on, the next generation of that is nice and efficient, cost effective, will still work.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Anybody else? Any other comments, thoughts? This was
Hey,
more of
Manoj,
Yeah,
a
Manoj, I have a
one,
question.
yes.
go ahead.
Good, good, Dugesh.
Yeah, can you hear me? I don't know why I keep getting
We can
muted.
hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah, so I was just asking on the question related to the document you were showing. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we have to work on it, but there is one important aspect which this group and you can help set up is the manageability and serviceability requirements when we go
Okay.
at the rack and component level. So like, since I'm spending a lot of time on it, so that is top of my mind, that how do we service at scale level, like Meta's level or CSP level,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. How do we debug it? All those things, and how are we going to monitor the errors and blast radius problems? So that probably this group can add a lot of value into
Very
that.
good point. Very good point. I think what I want to do is basically I just kind of put this down just as a whatever
Yeah,
discussions we are having. I'm putting out in document right now as a framework. There is nothing in there right now. It's just empty sections. And
yeah.
yeah, if we
Framework is
can
very good. So
basically
I was just saying, yeah, if we can add, or I can add if we have right
yeah,
permissions. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to put this out there. We have to figure out make sure how to coordinate it. One way is basically I can share it and maybe we put comments, or I'll maintain one backend and I think people can just put it in a comment and I can put it in the document
Yeah.
directly and we crowdsource it. But I will put this document out on the OCP site as a document where we can contribute and discuss. First goal would be that within next 2 weeks, let's get the framework down for the sections that we want and make sure that we have the right coverage for it. And then I'm trying to see where okay. So the advantage of that having framework document is it will allow us to have contributions coming into specific sections. And we can have discussion specifically on that. Like for example, we are having discussion on hotness tracking right now. And that would be a section in that document. So we have multiple people who want to contribute in there as a requirement, because hotness tracking is an interesting requirement that actually these are not only implementation contributions. This is where we are trying to give common requirement to the solutions that are going to get built in hardware. So this is going to be something where we're going to have multiple contributions. We're going to have discussion and see we can come to a common conclusion. If can, of course, the optional, and we want to maintain the optionality to minimum to make sure that hardware implementations are not too complicated. But that's what I think would be a good way for us to discuss, saying, for example, if we talk about hotness indicator, hotness tracking, it will come up in one of the common software interfaces. That where are we going to discuss the hotness? And that section discussion would be coming under that. For example, for system architecture, I'm just trying to find out where I put it there. Okay, I may not have put in right now, but I would like rather start putting those contributions. Okay, so we had common software interfaces. Under that, I was suggesting that maybe hotness tracker will come. So we'll get a lot of contributions under 4.4.2. So we had one discussion from Meta. Microsoft will make a presentation. And if anybody else, Durgesh, if you had from NVIDIA side or anybody has from Intel side, Reddy has already talked about it. AMD had a discussion as overall system requirements before. So we can put those discussions under the right sections as we start building it. Our goal would be to at least identify which sections we can target for readiness by end of this year or maybe middle of this year, and we can identify different goals for us so that we can create a roadmap for readiness.
Hey, Manoj,
Manoj,
I had a question on the
I have
slide.
one comment,
Go back to
Manoj.
the slide. Sorry.
Sorry, I got two people.
Go ahead, Vikrant.
Yeah, no, I
Vikrant, go
had
ahead.
a question on the Fabric Manager component. I'm trying to unpack it in the sort of the hardware part of it and the software part of it. I'd imagine, is it a standalone entity that you're imagining, or I'm assuming there'll be a software piece and a hardware piece to it. So if you go back to your slide, I was trying to map it to the spec that you want to come up with. I'm not sure where it.
Oh, good point. Yeah, this was a discussion.
Yeah, it
This
will
was
be
more of
both.
an area identified. Yeah, yeah, it could be, it will be, and could be both. And
It
by the
has
way,
to be both
yeah,
because now you're managing allocation of memory to say if it's in a rack level, then which node is getting which one, which how much memory, and the software component has to work with the central orchestrator also. So yes, you're right.
So doesn't it fall in the kernel BIOS toolbox? Like that's what I was trying to see whether that Fabric Manager itself as a kernel component or BIOS, or is it a hardware only piece or a software only piece? That's what I'm
It,
not
it,
sure.
this is a very important topic. CXL Fabric Manager as part of CXL specification is somewhat of a nebulous thing. There's no entity defined. What's defined is APIs to such a entity. So the team like this, the system level people, are the ones that can give this entity some life, some sort of a physical
mm-hmm.
posture. So and there are different proposals. Some people said CXL Fabric Manager runs within a CXL switch, or it
Mhm.
is an outside running on a device like a BMC, or just like you said, the CXL Fabric Manager's role can be done by a high-level orchestrator. There are different proposals. That's why CXL spec itself doesn't say how it should be done. But now, since we are system integrated as part of OCP, we need to do it. We need to say what it is. So this team can maybe debate and discuss it and come up with the best method.
Yeah,
So
maybe we need
Manoj,
to stay away from the
Yeah,
Manoj,
fabric term to avoid
my
the
point
confusion
was,
with CXL.
guys, let me talk here.
mm,
So my point was, right, as we are looking at this document,
mm,
uh, we should not keep this as a vague document because everybody will have different viewpoints, and if everybody is contributing, this will have multiple directions, right? So any place where we have different views, maybe we should debate and have a common basic minimum view. That way this document doesn't become a superset of all specifications. Otherwise people will think there are too many things, too vague, and the usefulness goes down. So we should have a very crisp view of what we want to accomplish, and anywhere there is a disagreement, we should debate here and then.
I totally agree, and that's one of the reasons I keep getting to the point of let us define what a reference design is. It might not be
mm-hmm.
the best, most efficient, but it is one way that we all agree. And as people design to it, critique it and come up with feedback, and we'll fix that spec even better. People can deviate from the design spec or from the reference design. They can deviate from it for whatever reason they are thinking, but at least the reference design could be comprehensive enough for interoperability.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah,
brings to a good way to have future agendas for this meeting. So, for example, right, we are of the view of there is no multi-level switching or even switching, right? So, let's bring that as a topic here, right? For example, do you just want to have a switchless design or with switching or multi-level switching? And let's debate that and see what we really want to put here. Things like that.
yeah, I agree. I think we first thing is basically to make sure that we put a framework down so that there can, as Siamak, you and Samir, you are saying, let's get to an alignment, and to alignment requires discussion, very focused discussion on a specific area, which people should bring contributions so we can have discussion specifically and not just philosophy, right? And this is why I think the having document helps, because now we can say, okay, we are discussing section 4.4.2, which is hotness tracking, right? And we have discussion on that. Now there are going to be some implementation. We have to go through some of the further discussion. For example, there are going to be multiple benchmarks, and all those benchmarks are going to be good because those are the end user use cases. Cache would have different benchmark than inference, for example. And we should make sure that we include those and but provide more information about those use cases so that people who are building the systems and going to leverage these designs can take advantage of the right appropriate benchmarks and metrics. Similarly, there may be going to be multiple contributions from design perspective. Expansion boards may be different for different systems, and we could discuss whether, hey, what can we contribute and how we can leverage off of each other. But I see CMX point also that we want to make sure that this does provide a good reference for people to use. So we may have to go through the process because, this is going to be hardware software co-design coming into a single document. Traditionally, OCP specification tend to be very hardware oriented, and so we are breaking a little bit of a ground in that space. So I'm sure we'll suffer a little bit, but I think as long as we are aligned on the direction, we will make good progress. Okay. Coming to this area, so as I think the gray color was specifically picked up because I think this is the gray area. We are going to start talking about it, and we're going to start contributing into it, and we'll start populating it. We'll pick a couple of examples of implementation, which we would be happy to bring from Meta side. I'm sure anybody who else is doing implementations and ready to discuss that, please bring in. We'll have that discussion and contribution to the document. For the specification template that I'm proposing, what I will do is basically I'll send this template out today on the email so that you have access to this document. Please put comments on it so that we can get a framework done. Of course, we'll get into the nitty-gritties and maybe properly, how do I say, beautifying the document over time, but let's make sure that we have the content appropriately there and aligns the goals for us. That make sense?
So Manoj, are you going to share also the presentation? Because I had some questions about the system architecture. We might want to comment on like slides 7 and 8 in terms of what system architecture.
Yes. By the way, this is something that I had just copied and pasted from the presentation that was done in the CMS group before. So that's not necessarily constraining anything. It's just an example. I wanted to make sure. But we should have the discussion for sure. In fact, I would love to see presentations if anybody wants to bring in. It is good to have specifically contribution brought to the group here and have a discussion that people can go back and look at it and align.
Okay,
so Manoj, that's a very good idea. Maybe next meeting, if we can actually carve out a portion of the time without disrupting the discussion that Samir is going to bring to agree on the higher level architecture framework that essentially provides the baseline for the spec. In other words, expanding slide 8 with a little bit more clarity, right, and broader, including different types of media and the fabric manager being a building block element, orthogonal to where it gets implemented, right, user versus kernel. If you can just expand on that one and agree on a little bit of next level of detail, I think that lays the foundation for the spec itself.
Yeah, good point.
And you and I can work, and maybe we can bring, maybe Samir, if you're interested.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to put this out there also on the folder, and will be there in the wiki, available for anybody to comment and provide. But I think that's a very good feedback. I think we should make this as the kind of a landing zone for us to have the discussion, and then each of these blocks basically expand into our specification has basically each one of these sections.
Yeah. In the document that we have, that essentially provides the requirements and higher level guidance on the inputs into each one of those specifications, and then the actual next level of specifications for each one of them can be a separate piece of document on its own, like memory expansion. There could be multiple specs.
Correct. And I think that's one thing, Reddy, I was thinking that where I struggle a little bit, let me share that right now, right? That there are going to be hardware implementations, and the challenge for us is going to be, where do we really say that this is a specification versus this is a contribution? In other words, specification requires us to all to be aligned and agreed to on a commonality, right? Like we're talking about hotness tracking right now. that's something that will become a common requirement. But then there are going to be implementations which are going to be some percentage similar, but they're going to be different too. So today, OCP, for example, has multiple contributions that are made: server design, server specification, and
Right.
CMX, I would love to hear from you also. And so we want to provide some flexibility where people can contribute their designs so that other people can leverage, but not necessarily force everybody to have exactly same server design, for example, because
Oh,
that may
yeah.
be difficult
Yeah.
to achieve.
Manoj, my comment now hopefully will unkink this problem that you're trying to solve and highlight another thing we need to consider. Within OCP work that we do, if in fact something is a contribution, it needs to be accompanied by a CLA.
Yes.
And so, on the other hand, if things are high level requirements, it could be done within an open discussion because there's not you could think of requirement is a request. It is not an IP contribution. So think through those 2 points and maybe rephrase what you asked. Let's see how we can answer it.
I'll think more and then I'll ask them. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
I'm just seeing that we have about 30 people on the call now. Anybody in this conversation, anybody can make an IP contribution. And if that is done, at the end, when the specification is complete, we need to go get a signature from everybody to do that CLA and FSA. And that is going to be cumbersome. So maybe at the beginning of the subgroup project that we're working on, we just refrain from what might be considered as an IP or a full contribution. Let's just talk about high-level frameworks so that we can have a conversation without IP entanglements. If in a particular implementation, a few people want to get together and in response to that requirement, come up with a contribution, those guys can make that contribution in a form of a write-up and accompany it with a CLA, and that might be a good contribution to OCP.
I see. I think you're yes, you're bringing out a nuance, not nuance actually, but specific
Yes.
expectation behind the word contribution. I see what you're
Yes.
saying. Yeah,
Yes. So,
I
so
can.
let's break it into 2 pieces.
Yeah.
So on one first piece, we all can work together without worrying about CLAs and FSAs and IP and such.
Yes.
Then we break into multiple work streams or subgroups or such. Each work stream will tackle a particular very detailed work, make a specification, contribute that one, and accompany it with CLA FSA.
Got it. Yes. Yes. Okay. Makes sense. And I think we can like what Reddy suggested and Samir also said that I think we'll make this as a base discussion, how to say, anchor for us, identifying those areas. Right now we showed 4 and then 5 right now areas where we can get those almost like a work streams that CMAC was suggesting. But I think it's important to do that because I'm kind of trying to figure out how to put a roadmap for us this year. And I think this could be our first milestone to identify these work streams, identify the framework in which we work, and get the discussion going for, how do you say, sharpening the pencil on it.
Right. I
Yeah,
see this
you,
team.
yeah.
I see this team, this work group, this 30 people who are on a call could be a steering committee or whatever, the guiding principal people, the one that uses even philosophy. Yes, we come up with ideas and what are the things we want to do. But when the work wants to really get done in the form of creating IP, you break away, go and do the work on your own, maybe 3, 4, 5 companies together, and they come back with a CLA and response to these requirements.
Okay. Yeah. Agree. Anybody, any other comments, suggestions? because I had prepared only this much, but I think we had a great discussion here. And
So
hopefully this.
Manoj, one quick thing would be, I think you may have to expedite some of the MOUs or some with JEDEC, because what I see is especially from the hardware side, there is a lot which is already defined in the JEDEC and you want to just reuse all that
Right.
information. So for example, in your framework document, you should have pretty much very thin text on the hardware side and just the links and references to the spec created by the JEDEC task groups. They have done pretty much a good amount of work already, and we should be able to leverage as is here.
Well, definitely we should look at. So I agree with the concept, or not concept, the fact that actually we will not reinvent the wheel. Anybody that is defining anything, we will reuse it. Make sure that we provide inputs into it. Now, for us to make sure that we know everything is being defined there, I think as a JEDEC members, we will know. Anybody who is not a JEDEC member will not know, and we will not be able to do that till it is public
Yes.
information.
So this is where I think I see that there are common folks in both JEDEC teams and this forum. You can actually define or name them or kind of empower them in a way that they can be a conduit between the CMS team and the JEDEC team. That is very important, even before the MOU signs, because MOU signatures take 6 months or even a year at times.
So
these guys
Pekar,
can do a legal conduit.
Yes, I agree. I think we should definitely do that. As in the areas where there's common, like what Anant is doing right now with SNIA, we'll definitely do that. I want to make sure that at least we get our framework straight. And I think as the work stream gets formed, as Siamak was mentioning, I think we will go and enable people to go and do the work in that area.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I don't think you need to think that it's going to take 6 months or 12 months to sign an MOU with JEDEC. The one we did CDXML, we did it in a much shorter time frame than that.
Correct. I think so. You correct me if I'm wrong, Kriv. So that is one directional where we provide inputs into JEDEC because that's the best way that open to close works, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think this is exactly where we are going. That we want to make sure that we put our requirements and discussion from framework perspective, so that makes it easy for us to provide inputs into the work that is going on in other bodies, which may be closed. And
also,
yeah.
Just to let you know, there's also a transition team as the work gets transferred. So there is feedback. It's a feedback loop from JEDEC back to us, which might get incorporated in the next rev. It's not totally one way.
Okay.
So Manoj, maybe the next a tool for us could be a sign-up sheet. People on this call could just say which other external organizations they're part of. We can have that spreadsheet available for people to reference.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll create that one. Good idea. That's good. Anybody else? I know we are 2 minutes over. I really appreciate the discussion. This is a very good, healthy discussion. I think this will allow us to make progress in more structured manner going forward, and allow us to go and engage with other bodies also. So I will work with next time bringing this up a little bit more clarity as Samir comes and presents its Microsoft presentation for hotness tracking. So that's it for today. Thank you very much, everybody, and appreciate staying few minutes over and having the good discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks, Manoj. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.